Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and this video is going to be going over the fusion for the current legendary that is going on. Going to be diving into what goes into it, the math behind it, if it's worth it, reviewing the champion involved, and all of that. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so as we pull up the news here, we can see the lizard men assemble. We've got an absolutely meme of a fusion here. So 4 epic drakes fusing in to Lord Vargall, and you can get all of those drakes by doing a bunch of Skullsworns. So we've actually never seen something like this. All of these Skullsworns and all of these drakes, and it fuses into this legendary here. So if you watch my content, you know I always recommend to keep at least 1 copy of every single epic if you can, because we never know when things like this are going to happen. I actually have a copy of a drake that I had saved up, so hey, I only have to fuse, I only have to farm 12 of the Skullsworns instead of 16. So, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. But first, I want to make sure and actually go over Skullsworn and the legendary. So if we go into the index under lizard men, alrighty. Well, first we'll go over Skullsworn. So Skullsworn is a farmable champion in the campaign. Is a stage 2 in the sewers. He is the rare drop. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But anyway, Skullsworn is, I mean, I've seen some people in the community talking about how he's decent for like early players. I don't think he's that great. I don't think he's worth like maxing out. I know you can build certain teams to get some utility out of Skullsworn, but in my opinion, he's not really worth like investing in. I don't think he's that great. He obviously, you can use him a little bit in the early game, and possibly in faction wars, he's a pretty cheap character to max out. But don't think he's that great. And he's actually fusion fodder for the legendary that I'll go over now. So Lord Vargall. Okay, so he actually has insane stats. Like 107's a really high base speed. He's based on defense. And then look at these base stats. 27,420. I see you, Plarium. 27,420. And then the attack is worthless on him. It might as well be 1. We don't care what that is. The defense of 1310 is also pretty good. So what does this mean? You get gear on him like Immortal or defense. They're really going to help him because his base stats are very good. So the A1 is attack 1 enemy 2 times. Each hit fills the champion's turn meter by 5% with a 30% chance to repeat this skill and place a 100% heal reduction debuff on the target for 2 turns if it's repeated based on defense. So what this means is there's a 30% chance he's going to repeat the skill and attack twice. So 30% of the time he's going to hit 4 times, and if he does that, he'll place a heal reduction. And also each time he does that, he's going to be filling his turn meter by 5%. So on times that he repeats the skill, he's going to fill up his turn meter 20% with a good base speed. He could be generating a lot of turns and you know, really snowballing there in terms of turn meter and going more often than his opponents. Then we've got an A2 that places a 25% strengthen buff on this champion for 2 turns, has a 75% chance of placing a provoke debuff on a target enemy for 1 turn. We can book that up to a 100% chance to place a provoke and to a 2-turn cooldown. So he would basically perma strengthen buff himself while also provoking something. So that has some pretty good utility. Anytime you can get permanent strengthen, self-buffing, and also it's not just that, you're having a 100% chance of placing a provoke on something else. So you're basically wasting a turn of an opponent. Not really, because they still get to do their default skill, but default skills are typically not that strong from your opponents, and you're self-buffing a permanent strengthen. That's not bad. It's not like super godly, but it's not trash. And then the A3 here is attack all enemies, 75% chance of placing a 50% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns based on defense. So again, common theme, we can book this up to a 100% chance to place AoE decrease attack. Now, the fact that this guy is a legendary, I wish this was 4 turns that we could book down to 3. For a legendary, a 3-turn AoE that places decrease attack wouldn't be like overpowered. I think that's the change. That's the first change I would make to him to kind of bring him up into like being a good legendary instead of a meh okay legendary. The passive is when attacked, decreases the attacker's max HP by 5%, cannot decrease a single enemy's max HP by more than 50%, occurs once per enemy attack, does not work against bosses. Okay, so a lot going on here. A 50% chance of placing a true fear debuff on targets whose max HP has been decreased by 20% or more. So, I guess this is for, like, defense arena teams, because it doesn't work on bosses, so you can't really use it against, like, the Spirit Keep boss and even then, I mean, it wouldn't bring a whole lot of value. So I don't know. I mean, this has so many qualifiers that I struggle to see the consistent value in it, and decreasing enemy max HP is not very strong to begin with, so I don't get the like low strength of the ability coupled with so many qualifiers. Seems kind of like way too extremely situational and weak. And then we've got Revives Skullsworn with 50% HP and 50% turn meter at the start of each turn. If there are multiple Skullsworns on the team, only one of them will be revived. So, I mean, I guess I kind of like what Plarium's doing here, but it's kind of a meme, like Skullsworns paired with a legendary. I mean, I guess for, like, Faction Wars, if you want to do some meme stuff in terms of, like, building Glass Cannon Skullsworns and then having them get revived every turn or something. But, I mean, I guess I could see it being kind of cool in Faction Wars or in some sort of area, but I don't see it being, like, super impactful. So, my first kind of general feeling of the legendary is he looks really cool. I love the aesthetics. He looks like a super alpha Skullsworn. If I pull up Skullsworn here, you can kind of see what he looks like, and then you pull up the legendary. He's like a super alpha Skullsworn, and looks super cool. I love the aesthetic. Just the kit seems to lack, like, consistent impact without, you know, having qualifiers. I like the A2, and I guess I like the A1, but the rest of it just seems to either have too long of a cooldown or be kind of like overqualified, or, you know, like inconsistent. So, gonna be interesting to kind of dive in and max him out and test him. I'll probably try to get him and max him out for the memes and kind of test him for you guys and see exactly what he's worth. But my first impression is that he's kind of meh. But let's get into this absolute meme of a fusion event. Now, it is worth noting that this goes on for a long time. I think it's like 22 days or something. Let me see here. Yeah, 3 weeks, so basically 22, 23 days, depending on when you're watching this video. It was 23 days from the start, I think. So you're gonna need to get 16 Skullsworns if you do not have any Drakes, and which means you can farm up 1 or 2 of them a day, and you'll be on pace to kind of finish the fusion as long as you're being diligent about leveling up previous Skullsworns. Don't make that mistake. Like, be leveling up previous Skullsworns while you're farming new Skullsworns, and then level up Drakes while you're farming new Skullsworns. Don't just level up random food. You want to double dip your energy, level up previous ones as you're preparing for future ones and all of that. Manage your stuff efficiently. So you'll see here, just to have a good kind of basis of what I'm talking about, I did 100 runs in the sewers, and I got 3 Skullsworns. So take that for what it is. I did 100 runs and got 3. I think the normal consensus in the community is that in Brutal, the drop rate for rare champions is about 1.5 to 2%, somewhere in there. Now, I did 100 runs and got 3, which would be 3%. There's a couple things possible. Either they slightly buffed it so that people wouldn't rage so much during the fusion. Maybe they buffed it up to like 3% and I had normal RNG. Or maybe I got lucky and was a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of getting 3 per 100. But if you do 100 runs, I would expect about 2 if you're farming Brutal. It drops down a little bit when you go to hard and go to normal. I think down at normal, it's somewhere about a 0.7, a 0.8% chance. I think on hard, it's about like a 1.2 to a 1.4. And I think on Brutal, it's about 2%. That's my non-scientific kind of sentiment from the community, and also a blend of my own experience. On Brutal, it seems like about 2%, and that kind of held serve with my 100 runs of getting 3. And you will notice they are level 27. Once I had 3 of them, I put them all in and started farming XP for my current Skullsworns as I'm farming for new ones to drop. And there is a couple things I want to touch on real quick here when it comes to farming these Skullsworns in the campaign. So we're going to campaign, and stage 2, Sewers of Arnak, is where we're going to be grinding all of these Skullsworns because that's where they drop. And I do want to quickly say, if you look over here on miscellaneous drops, thank goodness Plarium had the foresight to design this event to be in a stage where there's only one rare that drops. If we see a lot of these stages, like people farm stage 12 commonly, there is 2 rares. There's the Hound and the Diabolus that drop in this stage. Can you imagine how rage-inducing it would be to be grinding in the sewers of Arnok if there was 2 rares that drop? People would get like 3 in a row of the other rare and be like flipping their desk. And so thank goodness they had the foresight to put this in a level where there's only one rare. That was the first thing I thought to look at. I was like, oh, please. I couldn't remember Sewers of Arnok because I haven't played it in forever. I was like, please have it be a stage where there's only one rare that drops. I saw it and let out a huge sigh of relief. I was like, okay, because this event would be an absolute disaster if it dropped 2 rares. So what this means is, like I said, in Brutal, when you have a 2% chance of the rare dropping, about a 2% chance, that means it's not going to be split between 2 rares, because on stages that drop 2 different rares, it's not buffed to 4%. You're splitting that 2%. The game is going to roll whether it drops a rare or not, and then if it drops a rare, you get one of those 2. So that's why it's so huge that there's only the Skullsworn is the only rare that drops here. So every time you proc that 2% in Brutal, at least you're going to get a Skullsworn. There's no RNG when you get on top of having to get a rare. But the main thing I want to talk about is, a lot of people don't know this, but between difficulties, the champions in here can switch. And I don't know if it only switches between Brutal and Nightmare, but it definitely switches to Nightmare. So in Nightmare, there are gonna be, I think basically every stage has but I can't click on it because I'm low on energy, but it has one of these. I think it's a Basilisk, if I remember right, like off the top of my head. But a Basilisk has an ability where kind of like Skull Crown, where when he suffers fatal damage, he places a block damage buff on himself. So extremely annoying stage to grind on Nightmare. So I recommend, even if you have really good champions and you can do Nightmare, just do Brutal. That way you're not having to worry about it. I do stage 3 because it's the best silver, because it drops shields. And then obviously a Spirit champion is going to be really good in stage 3. Queen Ava slots perfectly. She's kind of my standard campaign farmer, so she works great for this. And then you're just going to kind of go in here on Brutal, stage 3. That's what I recommend. So it'd be stage 2, 3 on Brutal. That's what I recommend in terms of being the most efficient in terms of energy per rare acquired. So yeah, you're just going to do this over and over and over. And like I said, I did 100 runs and got 3. You can expect about 2 every 100 runs. So is it worth it? If you watch my content, you know my typical sentiment is, when it's realistic to acquire a legendary, you should do it, because you never know when a legendary is going to get the Dracomorph Mashaled treatment and come straight out of the vault directly into the meta. You also never know if this champion is going to be relevant for some sort of future content relating to faction wars, or future content where all of a sudden this champion has amazing abilities for. So if it's realistic to get a legendary, I always recommend doing it. There could even be a system in the future where you can feed legendaries that you don't need, and it's super impactful or something. So since legendaries are so tough to get, I always try to get them when it's realistic to do so. So I am going to try to acquire him. I know it's very taxing. There's so much going on in the game right now, so I do sympathize with that. For you free-to-play players, honestly, it's going to be really tough. You're going to have to focus really hard, try to farm 1 or 2 Skullsworns a day, take the whole 22, 23 days, and you're also going to need to be farming potions on top of that, because you have to send them for the fusion, and it's going to be really tough. Admittedly, for a free-to-play player, I'm like 50-50 on if you should skip it or not. If you're kind of a minimalist or a little bit of a spender, I think it's realistic to get it done. I recommend trying to do it if you're an active player and it's realistic to do so. But like I said, admittedly, and the topic I want to touch on is, there is a lot going on right now. Champion trainings and Fire Night tournaments and a lot of things kind of grabbing at your energy. So hopefully, we have rumors that Plarium's going to give out a little bit of energy for, you know, a round 2, if you will, of a quarantine bonus energy kind of, you know, gesture to the player base, and hopefully that comes through. That would be great if they did that. If they do, you know, yeah, or even spend 1,000 energy, see how it's going. Maybe you get like 9 Skullsworns to drop in that 1,000 energy, and you're like, wow, okay, I'm off and running. If you spend 1,000 energy and you get 1, then you might be like, okay, screw it, I'm not gonna, you know. So you got to kind of play it by ear, go by your own account. But to answer your question, I'm gonna do it because I like to acquire legendaries when it's realistic to do so. Even though I think this current champion is kind of a meh legendary, I'm gonna do it because it's realistic for me to do so. So yeah, that's gonna kind of cover it. And as always, guys, stay safe out there. Thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.